Everybody, and welcome to the November 19th Administration and Operations Committee. Thank you all for attending. Attendance, did I see Councillor Chambers? Councillor Chambers is here. So everybody is on site today, which is great. Anybody have anything to add to the agenda? Councillor Bell?
Mr. Chair, two small things in any other business, if that's okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Mayor Bailey, Councillor Oakley, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, delegations or declaration of pecuniary interest. Is there any right now? Councillor Garneau?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 8.1.
8.1. Anybody else? Okay, if anything arises through the meeting, just let me know. Delegations, we do have a delegation today. Is Melanie here? Yep. Melanie is here. If you'd like to come up. Okay. Melanie, if I could just ask that you make sure the light is on the microphone there. Just push the button.
Yeah, green.
And if you could just state your name and address, and you have 10 minutes for your presentation. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Melanie Mears. I live at 22 Madison Ave in Brantford. So I'm here today representing the St. George Children's Center, which is a heritage building located on 38 Beverly Street in St. George. So I do have a slide presentation. I don't know where that is. Sorry. Scroll down. Okay, perfect. So first off, I just wanted to give you a little overhead of what St. George Children's Center is and what it has become over the time frame. So I'll just first start out with, this is our location. So this childcare opened up in 1988 as a childcare center 36 years ago. So since then, we are the only full-time childcare in St. George at the present time. There is another program that offers part-day, but we are the only full-time childcare in St. George. And started with 16 children back in 1988. In May of 2022, I was asked to join this team to try to increase the spaces as well as try to increase enrollment because as most of you know, childcare is something that is definitely needed in our community, and with growing populations and expansions in buildings, childcare is definitely a need in St. George. So when I joined the team, it had 45 children. The hours are 7 to 5:30. I had a vision that with this team in the community, we could build more. So now the main site has gone from 45 to 126 children in that location. We are utilizing all rooms at this time. We also opened another site September 2022 in the school, which has 20 children as well. And we opened a new location, Little Learners, in June that has 26 children. It's operating out of St. Andrew's Church, the basement there. So at the present time, this is our toddler, wait a minute. This is our toddler room. Right now, this is the highest need in our community in St. George at the present as of today. Just for the main site, I have 408 children needing care. And this is only for 18 months to 2.5. Our next group is preschoolers. This group at the main site, we have 83 children waiting, and this is for 2.5 until 5-year-olds. And this is our JK school age. At the present time, we have no children waiting for this. If you have a JK or school age child, you get in right away, and I'm servicing 60 children at the present main location. Our school location is for our older guys, our 9 to 12-year-olds, and we have 20 children there and are full. In June, as I said, we opened up just after 5 months of being approved to the new Little Learners site. We've gone from 8 educators to 31 educators at all 3 locations. Presently at the Little Learners location, I have 142 children waiting for this program in the 18 months to 2.5, and I have 27 children waiting for the preschool program. So I just wanted to give you a little synopsis of that and why I'm here today. As you know, the government has frozen the funds for all childcare as of 2022, April 1st. And we can't increase our rates to parents due to the government program, which is trying to get us to that $10 a day childcare. So with that being said, we would use money from parents' revenues, things like that, and different types of grants. But the grants for childcare have been shut down at this time due to new funding regulations. So there's no money for us to help with the upkeep of this heritage building. So we are in desperate need of windows. Our building, we've had people come in. We run this building on the main site. We run it with 2 furnaces because it's such a big location. And we've had the furnaces serviced several times, and they're saying we're throwing money out the window because of the windows. The furnaces are in great shape. We have no concerns there. So in your little package, you'll see this is the main site and what has sort of happened. So our windows are starting to fall forward. We are not able to get replacement parts. We can't figure out who the manufacturer is of these older windows. So some of the windows we have locked. Of course, if a window is absolutely broken, we would absolutely get the funds to try to repair those, but it's an overall existing problem. We've got seal failure, we've got vinyl warping, we have original wooden windows in some of the places that aren't even vinyl, which date back to the early, I have someone in the window business that is saying probably in the early 1960s range of the type of windows in some of the areas. So as you can see here, you can see that we've got different types of failure. We've got condensation coming in on the glass, as you can see, and we've got those older wood frame windows, as you can see as well. So we've gone forward to get 3 type of quotes with regards to the windows. As you can see, we've got 3 quotes with regards to that building. If you can believe it, has 90 windows. 90. So there are tons and tons of windows. It's a beautiful space. Lots of lateral light comes in that building. And so we are in need of some of those funds. So I have been in touch with Jasmine from Heritage, and we're hoping that we can get some sort of funds or something to assist with the process. Even if we have to do one at a time, we're prepared to do that. But I just, at this stage, we're just throwing money out the door with the heating problem because of the poor windows. So I'm here today to present that to council to see if there's any funds. We will take anything at this point to help us with the window project. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions from committee? Councilor McAlpine?
So my understanding, there's a few windows in particular that are desperate to be replaced. If you were able to maybe elaborate on that a bit.
So we have 4 windows that we're going to have to replace no matter what, because the locks have fallen and they're falling forward. So we have to lock them to keep them forward, to keep them closed at this point. It's not a fire hazard. It's not a ministry. We're not breaking any rules by not having them fixed. But there are 4 bigger windows. Estimated cost to bring around $6,000 for those 4 to be done. Those are ones that we're going to start with, but the furnace and guys are saying to us, it's fine to do one at a time, but the problem's not going to be solved until you do them all. But, yeah.
So, good. Just another follow-up question. I think my understanding is you would need permission from the horseshoe here, I guess, to have staff help you with the grants. Is that correct?
That would be an area for Jasmine that would be able to speak on that.
Would you be able to speak on that, Jasmine?
Can I get you to just state your name for the clerk, please?
Sure. Jasmine Bedard. I'm Arts, Culture, and Heritage Officer for County of Braden. Through the chair, Councillor McAlpine, can you repeat your question?
I'm just asking that you need direction from the council in order to go ahead with helping with the grants applications. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor McAlpine, it is also a designated heritage building with bylaw, so we need a direction to bring it to the Heritage Committee proper, and the Heritage Committee will have to approve the repairs. But yes, we're also looking for grant funding and direction on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is this point where I can ask a question from staff?
Let's just stand by. We'll circle back to you, okay? Councillor Howes, then Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, and I think I'm predicting that maybe Councillor McAlpine and I were thinking in the same direction. But if I'm not mistaken, the way our process works.
Sorry, Councillor Howes, your time's up.
We're just waiting for the countdown clock. Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, the way requests for funding, requests for grants, typically the response is we're going to defer you to our grant process. However, if it's an emergency grant request, which is I think what you meant, then we look at it differently. And I'm wondering if staff, if Allison could maybe clarify my understanding on that. But I believe that if you're calling this an emergency grant request, then that's something we could be looking at short term. And then you could still look at the grant process, which happens early next year.
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly council can direct staff to administer emergency funds, but I would have to ask finance how much we may have in those reserves.
I'll leave it at that for now, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Melanie, you're looking for $94,000 to do the whole piece of work. That's what I understand.
Correct.
So if it was your house, you'd think, well, I'll add to my mortgage. So if you were to mortgage $94,000 at current interest rate, I think you're looking at about $10,000 a year you'd need to pay for the capital and the interest. And if you've got 152 people that you support, that's $65 a year, or about $1 a week. Have you thought about a campaign that you make it clear to the 152 people that are there, or parents of the people that are there, that if you don't do this, you won't be able to stay in business. So you're basically going to ask them to support by giving $1 a week, and your problem will be addressed. Now, I'm being very simplistic, but have you approached it from that angle as well as asking for funding from grants and the council?
So we did look into this, the city of Brantford, the Brant Foundation grants, and those grants were closed, and we found out that this was a desperate need. So that grant process was closed. We did look into some other Ontario grants, and we don't qualify with being a nonprofit and a charitable program, a charitable childcare. We cannot legally go to parents and ask if a parent donates, but I can't, due to the regulations of fees and things like that. There's strict rules on rates. I can't ask parents. I can ask parents to donate a gift or a card or whatever, but I'd have to be very careful on how I ask parents to say, you know, we're going to bill you an extra $1 a week for your childcare costs or something to cover that. But we are at where we are at financially. If I could have not come here, I would have not come here.
Mayor Bailey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Melody. I had the same problem when I bought my house, and I have over 60 windows in my house. And I hired someone for the best price to do the first 2 windows. And he butchered them. And then I called the lowest quote on your list, which happens to be your husband, Window World, and who's also a Rotarian friend of mine. And he came and put the windows in my house. And they approved, it was approved by Heritage, obviously. And he also fixed the windows that he didn't even put in to make them all match, which I thought was very nice of him. But the savings is incredible in my house because of the new windows. And I did it over a number of years too, because I had, I don't know, $1,200 a window or some crazy thing. So, but you have the right players in place. And I don't know how else we can do it. Can we have a capital campaign? Can I do a campaign for St. George and ask people to support the school for the daycare center? Can I do that? Because I mean, I know there's people in St. George that know that it has to be done, and enough people in St. George live in heritage properties that they know the heat that escapes is expensive. So I don't know whether that's in my realm of things I can do away from council, whether I can head a fundraiser for it. I don't know that there's a better cause right now when you've got that many kids waiting. And I was at the opening of your second daycare at the church. The need is huge. I mean, their waiting list is pregnant women that haven't even had the babies yet that are on the list. It's kind of kooky, the need that's coming to St. George, and that's without any visible growth. This time in 2 years, we're going to be talking about a whole different animal in St. George. So I think we need to get our ducks in a row now. Councilor Chris, I don't know whether I can help out or not.
So I guess my question for clarification on that, Mayor Bailey, is the fact that are you looking at potentially doing this as David Bailey, or are you looking at doing this as Mayor David Bailey?
It would have to be the mayor. Yeah, because I wouldn't want it to be mixed up with my own foundation that I already have at the Brant Community Foundation, and that's in the name of David Bailey. So this would have to be the mayor.
So I think we would have to have staff look into that to understand how that would play out. Okay. Councilor Miller?
Yeah, just a few questions through you, Mr. Chair, to the presenter. Does daycare own the building?
We do.
Okay.
We have a mortgage.
Okay. You've got a request in. We don't have any of your financials. Like, are you guys putting money aside when you get fees? You have operating costs, capital costs. Do you put money aside for capital costs?
We do.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about, you touched on it. I just wondering if you could flush it out a bit. As far as you've talked about what you can't do. What, as far as raising money goes, like going to the parents, what can you do? And related to that question is, you're not the only child care center in financial distress. What are they doing? Have you talked to other ones? Because I think this $10 a day childcare has caused a bit of financial hardship for a lot of daycare. So what have you guys done specifically to raise cash or raise money? And what are other childcare centers doing?
So this isn't my first rodeo. I've been in childcare for 33 years. I was the supervisor of all childcare centers in the county and the city for 31 years. And then I came out to St. George. So I'm well aware of the other programs that are sort of suffering and not suffering. Most of the programs that have childcares are in rental situations. There are very few that own the buildings. So they go back to their landlords for those type of issues. That's with the survey that I did put out there. That's where they're going back, is to their landlord for that type of thing. With regards to funds and reserves, there's certain money that the government will take from me if I have too much. So I have to slot it to different slots. So I have learned a little bit, as they say, to play the game. And so I can put a capital reserve for future childcare centers, but I can't use some of the money for to keep up what I have. So we do have a reserve fund that is for if we can build another center, which St. George is going to need. If St. George gets a school, we've got some funds there that we can put into that, which is capital or new build fund. So I do have funds for that as we've got so far, so.
Okay, I would have appreciated that information in your information that you give us, but, and I'll just kind of touch on what Councillor Bell said, talking about a mortgage or you get a loan. And it's not a bad idea. And the reason I say that is because the payback on a window, as far as, I know it's a capital cost, but as far as operating costs, I mean, you'll save the money in utilities within 5, maybe 4 years if the windows are as bad as you say. So, it would be good if, again, if you could get the windows in and save on the operating costs. But anyways, thank you for your answers.
Any other questions? Councillor Garneau?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenter. Being a heritage building, are the rest of the walls insulated? Do you know whether that's been done or is...
There has been some done, yes.
Any other questions? Councillor McAlpine, we'll go back to you.
When the time comes, I'd like to make a motion.
I think now might be the time if there's no more questions from committee.
Okay. So just to get the ball rolling, I'd like to suggest that we make a grant from the county for $25,000, and then we work with Dave Bailey and maybe raise some funds. And if we can direct staff to bring it to Heritage about the other grants that might be available. It's a bit of a mouthful, but.
Okay. Seconder to that motion, Councillor Kyle. Questions? Councillor Chambers, then Councillor House.
Yeah, I understand the motion. I just don't like the process. It would be nice to have a little bit more documentation on where the money's coming from and what you're going to do with that kind of thing. So I would much rather refer this to either a staff report for funding options or refer it to the budget committee, but to today throw money at the problem and then ask David to do something with the mayor's, that to me is not the way to solve the problem, because it's still going to leave $75,000 funding shortfall at some point, where if it goes through the grant committee and that it may be, there may be better options is what I'm saying. So I'm not going to support the motion as it is. If the motion fails, then I would put a motion forward to refer it to staff for funding options to resolve the problem.
Councillor House, then Councillor Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the motion, I am supportive of this. Again, and I don't even know if this is an amendment or a friendly amendment or just edit, that I think you meant emergency grant. Yeah. And the way I'm looking at this is a $100,000 plus situation, and the county of Brant is not necessarily going to be in a position ever to hand over $100,000. But if we're able to assist in getting things started, and the example that the mayor provided, with his own house, you do the worst 2 or 3 first, and you start working towards it, and then work towards a capital campaign with the mayor's help. The normal grant process, which is available to any non-profit organization. So I think approaching this in a multitude of ways is appropriate, and I support the motion as it stands with the word emergency in it.
Councillor Oakley, then Mayor Bailey.
Through the chair to finance staff, if possible, what monies do we currently have in regards to grants? And am I correct in that we actually no longer have the emergency grant tool? I believe that was something we might have removed in the last year.
Yeah, so we did remove the emergency grant category on the basis that if during the year council wanted to give money on an emergency basis, we would make that happen. We do not have any money left in the grants budget for 2024, but if council directed, certainly we would come back with where we could pull the money from or defer it to 2025. There's options out there. It's just a matter of if this recommendation goes through, as is. We can do a Friday file report just outlining where the money's going to come from, or if council wants to defer it for a report on options, then we are certainly welcome to do that too.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Heather. Mayor Bailey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, taking a second sober thought here. I'm just thinking that it's not the optics of me raising money for the school when there's a capital campaign right now for the library and a capital campaign that hasn't met its goal for the Wilkins Center. I'm not sure how that would look, especially in my own backyard. So I will help any way I can, but it would have to be on a informal basis and in a different way, because it's when you have two countywide capital campaigns underway, I shouldn't be raising money for something different. Thank you.
Councillor Garneau, then Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Unfortunately, I can't support the recommendation because I think that we do have processes in place, including our grant cycle, that's going to reopen, and I'm very mindful that we are a large and diverse community with a number of heritage buildings, and I worry about the precedent that we might set, that one can come to council and more or less work through a different process that is perhaps not equitable to those who are watching the timelines and everything. And I do recognize there's an emergency here, and my stepkids actually went to this childcare program for a number of years when we were in St. George. So by no means is it a commentary on the program or the people involved, but I think we do have processes at the county that we have to follow. And as has been the case with a few things that have come to me in my ward that I've referred over to the grants, that is normally the mechanism we have for that. So while I believe in the work that folks are doing and the urgency of the situation, I can't support this from a process standpoint.
Councillor Miller, then Councillor Bell.
I guess it depends on when you come and ask for help for the windows, because depending on what with your table, you get different answers. Because I know St. Joe's in Brantford came and asked for some help with their windows, which they also badly needed, and they were turned down. What Councilor Garneau says is absolutely right. We do have a process in place, all right, for asking for money, and I don't know. I don't know how someone can just give away $25,000, no matter the cause, without at least a little more information about where the money's coming from, about their finances, and so forth. So there's a lot of information. Even ask Heather. She says, well, we're not sure, we'd have to look into it. So we're going to move a motion. Staff doesn't quite know. I don't think if we wait a week, 2 weeks, whatever, it's going to make a big difference. I would rather do it properly than just haphazardly, and that motion is haphazard.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I too cannot support the motion as presented. This is a project that has got a 25, 30-year lifetime, and we need to think about the better ways of funding it, because I don't believe you should just simply give over $94,000. I would rather translate it into what does it cost me every year, and then I would say, well, and what am I saving every year by the fact I've got these new windows in. And I think the differential cost might be quite small. There might be other ways of delivering that differential between what you save and what you have to spend on an annual basis. So I'd like to see this come back with a staff report, and we can consider all aspects of it rather than just give a knee-jerk $25,000.
Okay. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would rather see this deferred for one cycle, so we can get the staff report back and get some more information back on financials and a whole lot of other things on this and whatnot. So I do remember, and I think Councillor Chambers and I are the last two that are here, that when we did sell this building to the county, or to the daycare for, I think it was for $1, if I remember correctly. So I support that they need help, but I think we need some more information. So I'd rather see it deferred for one cycle and come back and do it properly.
Councillor Kyle, you're the only one that hasn't chimed in. You want to jump in on this, or are you good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Am I allowed to?
I'll let it go.
The main purpose of me here was to get the help from Jasmine for the heritage. It wasn't necessarily to say that I need the money from. I needed her help to help me apply for the grants for the heritage. So that's the main purpose of me being here, is to apply for that piece.
Sorry. Right, which doesn't require council direction. You've got.
No, she needed council direction to do that. So that's.
Sorry, for clarification, for an emergency heritage grant, direction if we were to go that way.
But the emergency heritage grant would circle back to us anyway, right? Okay. Final word, Councilor McAlpine.
So I think the way it's going, if we defer it for one cycle for Jasmine to come back with a report and with work with staff for appropriate reactions to this, I think that would be appropriate. So if I made that recommendation that we defer it then for one cycle.
Okay, so you're amending your first, or getting ready your first motion, and now you're motioning for a deferral for one cycle to allow staff to understand where the money would come from in an emergency.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate.
Right, we've already got it approved. Yes, we'll have to. Well, the deferral overrides that, though.
I think we defer it.
Deferred for one cycle. Councilor Howes, Councilor Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'm following what's going on, but where I'm a little, I've been on the Heritage Advisory Committee for 7 or 8 years, and the Heritage Advisory Committee itself doesn't have any funding.
Right, it will come back to us.
So I'm not sure I understand what the benefit would be of going through the Heritage Advisory Committee, other than getting the committee's blessing on making modifications to a designated heritage building. But I'm not aware of there being a fund of money that's any different than the emergency grant conversation that we're having right now. So if staff could maybe clarify that, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair. That's correct. This is not it. It's all coming from the county, so there isn't a specific fund for heritage grants through the committee.
Go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Howes for clarification, because it is a designated and listed building with a bylaw, the Heritage Committee, per our planning policy, needs to make determinations on it. So that's where the heritage component fits within it. So the grant stream, as we are discussing, is separate to what I would be bringing to the Heritage Committee, which would be decisions on going forward with modifications to a designated structure.
Which makes sense, because it's designated. Okay, right. Councilor Chambers?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wouldn't it make a lot of sense is to withdraw the motion, which covers the whole process, and just move a motion requesting a staff report on the issue be presented at our next meeting? And then all the information, all the requests can be consolidated into something, and then we can deal with it. But to defer the motion, which we've already heard is not going to work because the mayor is unwilling to carry out what the motion says. And now let's just withdraw the motion, which either that or defeat the motion, and ask the staff to bring a report at our next meeting. Then we're not deferring anything. We're just moving forward and getting the problem solved as fast as we can.
Councilor McAlpine?
I'd be okay with that.
Okay. The seconder's good to withdraw? Seconder, sorry. Okay, so the motion's been withdrawn. Councilor Chambers?
I will move that the delegation be received and request a report from staff to be presented on resolving the issue at our next meeting.
Mayor Bailey seconds that. So everybody understands where we're going here, correct? Questions? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, thank you. I think in a roundabout way, we're going to get where we want to go here. So Okay, moving on to section 5, adoption of the minutes from the previous minute. Can I get a mover? Counselor Oakley, second. Counselor Kyle, questions on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Counselor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And from a question I asked about Cleaver Road Bridge, we were looking at having public engagement this quarter, at least, and that's what I tell people. I've told a lot of people. I haven't heard anything. Do we have an update on that?
Mr. Walton in the back, you able to come forward?
Still working on there's a heritage component to this bridge. We're working on the report for that. The public meeting list will be in Q1.
Councilor Miller?
Thank you, bro. Which is fine. It's just last time I was told this quarter, so that's what I tell people. So I don't care when. Sooner is better than later. But if it's first quarter 2025, can I tell people that when they call me and ask me, which they are calling me and asking me? Okay.
Another thing is we're running out of
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else business arising from those minutes? Okay, seeing none. Moving on, consent items to be approved. We got a few of them in here. So we'll go 7.1.1 RPT-0494-24 Source Water Protection Plan. Can I get a mover? Councillor Coleman, Councillor Bell, questions? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The area that Brantford's this is applied to, I tried to find that. It's not in the report. I went to the supplements. I think it's in the Oak Park area, but I don't. Yeah, I suspect so. But I wonder if the author could enlighten us on this. And then one other question, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Through you, Chair. The intake protection zone 2 in the county of Brant is the Oak Park area and also along the Grand River here in Paris.
Okay. Question maybe more generally. We have source water protection, and I know how we deal with it when it's within our own municipality. When it's in another municipality, in this case Brantford for us, and they have a planning application and they're putting up whatever they put up, a gas station, a new industry. What's the process for us giving input on that to make sure that it's not, that the site plan is doing what, or is written up the way it should be written up? Do we give input on that? What's the process for that? Andrew?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Miller. So properties within the county of Brant will be managed through the county's development application process. Although we are supporting the city of Brantford's source water protection updates, the policies that our properties will be applied to are the policies that we have for the county of Brant's source protection plan, which we approved in the September ANO.
Councilor Miller?
I appreciate the answer, but it wasn't the answer I was looking for. When another municipality, Brantford, has a planning application come forward and it's in our source water protection area, what input, how do we give input on that process? It's not in it's in another municipality, but it's our water intake zone. And I could take that in a Friday file if you don't know the answer.
So I think I'm slightly, I'm not understanding the question. The county of Brant wellheads around our municipal water don't extend into the city of Brantford.
They don't?
No.
Okay.
So the city of Brantford's intake protection zone, because it's a surface water intake, extends into the county of Brant because of the travel time for the water to get down there. So there are situations where our land applications could have a negative impact on the city of Brantford's intake, but we manage that through our policies.
Okay. So reversing that, do they give input then when we build in their intake? No?
Through you, Chair, they endorse our source water protection plan. So we came to admin and ops in September, and our changes to our source water protection policies are out for pre-consultation, which includes other municipalities that are affected by those policy changes to have an opportunity to speak to it. So they have endorsed our changes.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so it's moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 7.1.2, which is RPT 0105-24, design, supply, delivery, installation, construction of the MBR system for St. George. Can I get a mover? Mayor Bailey, Councilor McAlpine. Questions on that? Councilor Miller, then Councilor Bell, then Councilor Miller.
Couple questions. This is coming in almost to the penny, 20% over the engineer's estimate. Can I get a reason as to why?
Through the chair to Councilor Miller. We did ask our consultants to review in detail, and we think that the scope crept a little bit. It includes some different technical aspects that have to tie into the rest of the design. So they reviewed the design and said, yeah, it does make sense, along with the market conditions that we know have increased prices in the last few years.
Okay, so mission creep, I guess. And okay, maybe the engineer's report was a little conservative. You had one bid. Now, if I go online, I look, this MBR technology, it is offered by, I see at least several dozen vendors. When you're putting something like that, do you treat this just like a grass tender? In other words, you put it up on the site, call it a day, and whoever bids. Or do you actively go out and seek maybe vendors for this technology and say, hey, we're putting this bid out. Are you interested in bidding? In other words, are you doing everything you can to get vendors to bid? Or do you just standard, this is what we do, call it a day?
Through the chair, we did have some dialogue with two different vendors who do some work in this area. Most of the MBR work in Ontario does seem to be offered by Veolia. But yeah, we wanted to promote and encourage a better competitive market. So we did have some dialogue with another vendor who does work in this area, but unfortunately they didn't submit a bid, and we don't yet know why.
Okay, good answer, thank you.
Councilor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Same question as Councillor Miller, but I'm a little disappointed we ended up with only one bidder. Question, would you use the same technology when we expand the Paris water treatment plant?
We are looking very seriously at MBR. We think it fits very well with the Paris expansion. So it's a serious contender for the technology. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 7.1.3, RPT-0502-24, disposition of surplus lands. Can I get a mover? Councillor Howes, Councillor Coleman. Questions? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It doesn't say in the report, and that's why I'm asking the question. So, what becomes of the proceeds? Do they go into the Affordable Housing Reserve because this is declared surplus lands, or does it go into offsetting the cost of the road project?
I think we're going to get that answer.
Through you, Mr. Chair, as per the resolution that was passed by council, a portion, I think 25%, does go into the Affordable Housing Reserve, and then the rest will go back to the Property Reserve.
Okay, thank you, Heather.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I do have a quick one for clarification. Can somebody explain how county-owned land becomes surplus. Is it, first of all, does it go to potentially the adjoining landowners for first dibs on it? Can landowners request county-owned land for purchase to be surplus?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So typically, a parcel like this would be taken through the senior management team, and if there's no deemed purpose for operational or capital projects, then a report would come forward to deem the land surplus. I don't know if Mr. Walton has anything to add, but typically that would be our process. Again, for it to go through all of senior management and make sure there are no operational or capital requirements for the land.
Okay, if I could just expand on that a little bit. So not this particular property, but what if there was a property out there that was county owned? Would somebody be able to approach the county to suggest purchase of that property?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We do occasionally, it doesn't happen very often, but we do get unsolicited request to purchase. And again, that would come through a staff report to council if it was an unsolicited request to purchase.
And who might one have to contact in order to do that unsolicited?
Through you, Mr. Chair. It can go through any number of methods, typically the staff person they've been dealing with, or they come directly to me and I distribute to staff.
Okay, thank you. Okay. No other questions on that one? Oh, Mayor Bailey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, would neighbors of that excess property have first refusal on it? Would we bring in a third person if we didn't need to?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we don't have a policy for first right of refusal, but certainly adjacent landowners would be aware that it was being surplused.
Or would they just be aware that it had sold to someone else?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it would go through a public process, so they would have the same opportunity as anyone else if they would like to, but we don't have a policy for first right of refusal on it.
Maybe we should. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 7.1.4, which is RPT-0214-24, entrance bylaw, repeal and replace. I'm going to move her. Councillor Oakley, Councillor Kyle. Questions? Councillor Miller, it's your day.
There's a variety of reasons somebody needs a permit for an entranceway permit, whether it's a new permit or they're doing changes like paving, but also included in there is repave. I was kind of surprised at that. Why is repave need a permit?
Through the chair, some municipalities, we've researched all of these things, and some municipalities have it, some don't. Why we have it and why it works for the county of Brant is we are able to, you've seen a lot in the news where residents get ripped off by unscrupulous asphalt companies. This way we are kind of protecting our residents by knowing what's being done and who's in town working. And then also when repaving takes place, we want to know what's taking place because sometimes people take it upon themselves to start widening their driveways without going through the application process. So it's a small fee, staff do the follow-up, and then staff also are monitoring who's in town working and who's not.
Councilor Miller?
Okay, fair enough. Is it the same fee as if I'm putting in a brand new?
Through the chair, no, I do not believe it is. It's a much smaller fee. It's that fee for repaving. We have not increased it in many years. It's a placeholder, and it's just to cover our administrative costs.
Okay. And then the last question I have, I don't know if you can answer, maybe the author. I'm reading the bylaw, and it talks about granny suites. So granny suites, they can have their own entrance, which is fine. That's like ARUs. I'm surprised ARUs are not in this policy. Now I read the next report; they're in there. And I'm just wondering if ARUs shouldn't be also mentioned in that ARUs cannot have their own entrance. It's just I don't know if the author has any thoughts on that.
Through the chair, we did have discussions about that, and we were trying to make the ARU kind of a standalone policy. But we can take it back for future considerations if there's updates done in the future.
Just a thought again, because I'm reading Green Space. I'm looking for the ARU, and I didn't see it in there. So, but okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you,
Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is a comment rather than a question. Is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And not specific to Greg actually, but more to staff in general. This report included a copy of Brandon Courtlive's report from January 2023, which is almost 2 years ago, about residential parking. And it prompted me to be thinking about some of the recent conversations that we've been having at council and illustrations that Councillor Bell provided about long vehicles on short driveways, and I was reading through that report from 2 years ago, and I think it references a minimum 19-foot driveway recommendation. And then I pardon me, did a quick Google on how long is a Ford F-150 or a Dodge Ram King Cab, and they're more than 21 feet long. And the other thing that jumped out at me in that older report was it references the fact that there's at least a 5-year lag between policies that we make and when they actually impact the way houses are built in this community. And I just, my comment is related to all of that. I sincerely hope that we are initiating some new policies and new ways of looking at how long driveways and their entrances need to be for future residential dwellings in this community. So just a comment.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Moving on to 7.1.5, RPT-0398-24, Operations Policy Serving Additional ARUs. Mover? Councillor Chambers, Councillor Coleman, questions? Councillor Chambers?
Just not a question, Mr. Chairman, but a comment. And it's something that I think all of our policies should give consideration to, and that's the wording in the policy. The policy itself seems pretty strict. One, the wording that I like is the general manager of operations may provide approval of additional services per property when adequate justification is provided. That means that not everything fits into the same glove. There are certain circumstances that may require common sense to be used when the policy is being put forward. And this gives, it's a notwithstanding clause or a loophole. It gives the general manager the authority to use his common sense if justification is given and it makes sense to have go outside of the policy. That particular phrase should be in all our policies.
Councillor Miller?
Is that a motion? The policy is saying one hookup for water, wastewater. Fair enough. The policy is silent when it's private services. Should we be putting anything in there, or should we just leave well enough alone and let them decide on a case-by-case basis?
Rick?
Oh, I think Rob Bolton would like to answer this.
Through the chair to Councillor Miller, issue of private services would be dealt with through the building code, and any issues that they had to deal with is approving that under the building code. So it is municipal approval, but it's already sort of taken care of.
Councilor Miller?
Just to follow up, I need you to explain to me how this quite works. So, somebody on private services puts in an ARU. When they're looking to cite something, they have to identify where the neighbors' wells are and their septic and all that. Correct? Am I correct on that? In other words, we're not just looking at their property. We gotta.
Through the chair to Councilor Miller, it depends on what they're doing. If they are building a new septic system, yes, they do have to identify those things and make sure that they have the setbacks. Or if they don't have to do anything, then they wouldn't have to do that. So it'll come up through the review required on the building code of what's there as to whether or not they have to improve it or not, and then the other things will fall out as per the legislation.
Okay, so nothing in the policy, which, like I say, is fine, but if problems arise, it's dealt with through the building code. And that's what I need to know. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Moving on to 7.1.6 RPT 0492-24, traffic modifications. Can I get a mover? Councillor Coleman, Councillor Bell. Questions? Councillor Bell, then Councillor Oakley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to the second item, which is William Street at West River Street. Of course, West River Street is getting torn up at the moment, but I get about an email a week from residents complaining about that junction. And 90% of the people that write to me say, can we make that a four-way stop? Because that will slow people down on what is becoming a bit of a rat run in town. It'll get more so when we tear up Grand River Street. There'll be more traffic going that way. And I think we need to be thoughtful about how we control traffic. I've said this before, and I think we've made the promise to our residents that we will put extra controls in, and this would be one of the extra controls. So rather than just having another east-west stop sign, I'd put in north-south stop signs as well, and I'd be prepared to make a motion to that effect come the time.
No other questions to that? Oh, sorry, Councillor Oakley, yes.
Through you to Greg, in regards to the first item, am I understanding correctly that this was essentially turned that into an all-way stop there, that intersection?
Yes, through the chair, sorry, you're talking about the Joseph Brandt?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. That's, was brought to our attention, and it's not a non-typical intersection, as you can see by the diagram. It almost looked like a connecting lane or link, and for many years it did not have a stop control there, so it was deficient. So that's completing the intersection there. It will be new, but we'll post it so everyone's aware.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
No other questions to that? Circle back to Councillor Bell.
So, Mr. Chair, I would like to make an amendment to this recommendation that we make the William Street at West River Street.
Councillor Bell, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. This is just for option or for number 2, right?
Number 2. Yeah.
Okay. What I'm going to do then is can we pull? Are you in favor to pull number 2? We'll get rid of the rest and we'll circle back to it.
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to pull number 2, which is William Street and West River Street. So we're just going to right now vote on the approval of number 1 and number 3, which is Joseph Brandt Street and White Swan Road. Okay, everybody's clear on that? Okay, so all in favor of 1 and 3? Opposed? Okay, 1 and 3 are carried. Councillor Bell, back to you for number 2.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would like to make an amendment to the recommendation as presented. Rather than being a two-way stop, I think I would prefer to see it as a four-way stop in response to the many requests from residents, and in the light and in anticipation of the work we're going to do on Grand River Street South, which will lead to much more traffic on this road and the need for more traffic control. I look for somebody to second.
Mayor Bailey is your seconder.
Thank you.
Questions on that? Councillor Howes, then Councillor Chambers, then Councillor Oakley.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you, I guess a couple of questions. One to Councillor Bell and one to Greg. I'm wondering whether this is intended as a temporary measure during the big dig or whether it's forever. And then I'm also interested in Greg's opinion, and I'm very respectful of the fact that it will be that it has been a rat run, and I love it when you say that. But that means there'll be multiple stop signs on West River Street from its southmost point down by Lions Park all the way up to the old Penman's building. And I'm just wondering Greg's opinion from his expertise on that many stop signs in that space. Thanks.
Greg?
Yes, through the chair, we can definitely carry out whatever council wishes. I'd like to say that right off the hop. We have looked at this intersection many times and looked at the warrants. The warrants aren't there because you're looking at intersecting traffic flows. Stop signs do not work as traffic calming. We'll put in a stop sign there, and then the same residents are going to call us and tell us that people aren't stopping at the stop sign because there's not enough traffic queuing on those side roads to indicate for people to stop. Busy intersections require four-way stops, and the indicator to stop is because as you approach it, you see cars there. When you start seeing intersections where typically you're using every day and you don't see a lot of traffic there, people don't stop. I think the county, we've depleted the Brant Safe Streets budget year after year since it's been provided by council. I think in this scenario that we implement more traffic calming in the area if it's traffic calming that is the desired effect, which I believe it is. But that's my only concern about putting in stop signs where they're not warranted. They lead to other issues.
Councilor Chambers?
Just, and I don't disagree maybe that a four-way stop would be good, but I'm not the expert, and we have invested a lot of money in Brant Safe Streets that look at these intersections and look at every intersection and use science, if you want, rather than political direction. So I'm not going to support the recommendation. I'm not going to support the resolution. I am going to support the Brant Safe Streets recommendation. I have been asked many, many times for four-way stops in the village of Scotland, Burford, and everywhere else for that matter. And I've always relied on the experts to tell me whether they're warranted or not. And in this case, we've just heard that a four-way stop is not warranted. So if it is not warranted, then I'm not going to support it.
Councilor Oakley, then Councilor Bell.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councilor House and Councilor Chambers largely said what I wanted to say, but I'll just also add on there that, I think the Brant Safe Streets is the way to take this. And I think if we're constantly running out of our budget each year, and one of the things I hear constantly about that program is that people want to see more out of it, perhaps that means that budget or that program needs a bit more budget to it. So.
Councilor Bell?
Yeah, thank you. I have two comments. One is that may not be warranted today, but the minute we start diverting traffic off Grand River Street, we're going to change the traffic volumes considerably. So, in recognizing exactly what Councillor Chambers says, I'd appreciate that if we could run the calculations on the basis that traffic that normally goes through Grand River Street is going through West River Street and see whether it's still warranted or not. But even beyond that, I think we've made a commitment to our residents of West River Street that we will control that traffic during the period, at least when we're digging up the road. And I think what will happen is that people will actually become quite comfortable with that bypass, and it becomes actually not the bypass, but it becomes the road. So second point, we just 3 minutes ago approved a junction of Joseph Brand Street and Mulholland Street. I cannot believe, because I walk that way every day, that would warrant an all-way stop, and across there would not. I mean, I'm completely lost in terms of the justification.
Through the chair, I can explain that. So if you look at the diagram, There's only one stop sign at that location. So everyone has free movement there. There's not a control. So people can legally turn into someone's path. Where the other section, you have a two-way stop. The one stop was missing. So that's why we're putting it in there. It's a cleanup. It's the same scenario. So you now have the intersecting roads. You have a stop on both sides and you have free flow. Here you only have one stop sign and there's three entrances to this intersection. So that's the issue. There's stop controls missing.
It defies common sense, Greg, sorry. I walk this road almost every day. I see virtually no traffic. Lucas lives on the corner. He probably can testify to the volumes of traffic. Contrast that with West River Street. There's just a 2-3 orders of magnitude difference. And if you look at West River Street now, people come down from the railway line, and they're actually coming down a hill at that point. So there's a double issue there. People are actually speeding up as you go down that hill. So I accept that it may not be technically warranted, but common sense should prevail in this case, and I will keep my motion on the floor.
Any other questions? Okay, so we've got a motion on the floor, seconded, to make that a four-way stop at West River and William. No more further questions. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? I guess that's a motion is carried 6-5. Councilor Chambers?
Would it be in order for me to move that a four-way stop be placed at intersection in Scotland, which has been requested many times but turned down because it has not been warranted? Would you entertain a motion at this time to do that? There's also a situation in Burford that has not been warranted but has been requested by me many times for it to be a four-way stop. My point is, are we now going to move into the realm of wherever what is brought to us, we ignore safe streets that we've invested all kinds of money in and rely on experts to inform us? Now we're going to go with what we think we call common sense. Be prepared for a few motions to come forward at our next meeting for four-way stops in various situations throughout the county.
I think I appreciate what you're saying, Councilor Chambers, but I think also with this one here, there's the addition of the fact that we did say when Grand River Street is closed, all the traffic is going to reroute that way. And I think this is a preemptive medicine for that. And if you want to bring your motions, you're totally free to bring your motions.
So I understand that this is a temporary four-way stop while the dig is being done?
No.
So it's a permanent four-way stop?
Okay, moving on. Our 7.1.7, RPT 0521-24, 2025 fees and charges. Can I get a mover? Councilor McAlpine, Councilor Kyle, questions? Councilor Miller.
The fees themselves, a lot of them are cost recovery. Some we try and promote or discourage a certain behavior. Other times we're looking at, and we take into consideration what other municipalities are charging, especially around facilities. When we're trying to promote an activity, one of the things I think about is maybe recycling. Was there any thoughts given to not raising the blue box price?
Who can comment on that? Andrew?
Yep, through you, Chair. With the blue box transition and the changes to the regulations, the support and distribution of blue boxes is going to be done through the province in CMO. I understand what you're saying, and we can take that back. The idea is over the short term to continue making it easy for residents to move through the transition and figuring out how best to do that moving forward.
Councilor Miller?
that follow up with Andrew, and then one more question. So along those lines, did I could have asked the same thing about composters. Again, raise the fees. We're trying to save that landfill as best we can. Did you have input, Andrew, into those fees? And like you say, did you look at them and think, well, are they the best idea?
Yep, through you, Chair. We were. It's not a money making on these. It's just cost recovery. So, I mean, again, we could look at lowering those fees to encourage it, to encourage the use, and we would have to find a way to subsidize.
Yeah, it would be part of a larger strategy. But like I say, I was looking at. It says in the report, you try and encourage certain behavior and discourage others. So, and then the second question, again, cost recovery. And I'll just pull one out because I was asked about it specifically, and that's for a liquor license permit. We're going from 142 plus 149, something like that. An agency letter for liquor license. What would that entail as far as staff time that it needs to be charged $149? Is staff able to answer that very specific question or not today? And there's about 50 others I could pull out and say, how much staff time does it take to do that? So,
I'm sorry, are we talking the liquor license?
yeah, page 152 of our report.
So it's not just the letter, it's the letter plus building and fire both do an inspection. So it's 2 inspections plus the municipal letter that go into that fee.
Okay, so I suspect they don't go out to the same building time after time if it's the same facility asking for the license.
It's only when they're doing a permanent license. So like temporary license or like one-time event licenses don't have that fee. It's just when they need an actual letter from the municipality that says fire signed off, the county's okay with it, and building, that's when we charge that, and it's mostly the inspection fees.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on that report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 7.1.8, RPT 0345-24, contract extension for water and wastewater billing services. Can I get a mover? Mayor Bailey, seconder. Councilor Kyle, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Final one, RPT 0503-24, the 2025 paramedic services budget. Can I get a mover? Councilor Coleman, Councilor Oakley, questions? Councilor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, a comment. We're seeing an 18.6% change in the budget from last year. A lot of that's driven by additional ambulance. And I notice in the capital forecast, every couple of years we're going to add an ambulance. But it's not just adding an ambulance, it's adding the crew that goes with the ambulance. So can we anticipate that we will see significant percentage increases in budget every second year from now on?
It's not necessarily when you replace an ambulance, you add staff as well. If there's an additional ambulance coming on board, then
these are additional. These are additional. Every 2 years there's an additional ambulance coming.
There's replacements and there's additional.
These are additions.
Right? Okay. Cindy?
Through the chair. So I guess the ambulance strategic action plan that was done back in 2016 did recommend, based on forecasting of call projections, that a 12-hour ambulance be placed on every 2 years. So that is what has captured a new study, because that study has sort of now expired and conditions have changed. So whatever comes back from that will probably adjust the future capital forecast and what our sort of capacity and resource requirements will be for the next 5 to 10 years.
Thank you. But to be clear, Cindy, when we get a new ambulance, what is the crew implication of that? How many people do we need additionally to crew another ambulance?
Through the chair, so for 2025 with the 12-hour ambulance, that's a staff of 4 FTEs.
Sorry, I missed that.
4 full-time equivalent staff.
4 full-time
for a
equivalents.
12-hour.
Yeah. So every 2 years we're going to be adding effectively 4 full-time equivalents, and there'll be a trigger point where we add another supervisory level. So my point is we can expect fairly significant percentage increases on budget every second year, just because of adding an ambulance. Just an observation. I'm not doubting. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I will make the point that paramedic services is very responsive to population growth. And what I'm seeing in the health unit is that they're not, and they should be. And there are other areas that should be sensitive to population growth. Even our own staffing of the county staff has to be, in many respects, sensitive to the growth in population. So it's just a warning, a notice to us all that as we grow, then we must expect our budgets to grow as well. And sometimes they're going to grow in excess of the increased revenue we get from that increased population. And this will be one of those examples. Thank you.
Councillor Miller?
Just Councillor Bell's query, and it's a good query. We know currently the paramedic services are oversubscribed. They're over 100% usage. When we add this ambulance, this half ambulance, we're still going to be over 100%. So the addition of the ambulances, I don't see that going away for the next foreseeable future. Now, one of the big drivers of that is hospital wait times. I think we all know that. We've discussed it. It was at one point the average was 1 hour and 6 minutes earlier this year. Our last report was down to 53 minutes. If we could ever get a handle on that, where they just come in and drop them off, we would see our needs for ambulance drop substantially. But it's an issue we've been fighting. We've had meetings at various municipal conferences. So around this table, we're not going to solve it. We'll work at it. We'll chip away at it. We'll do it with other municipalities. But unless and until that is drastically affected, yeah, that trajectory for more ambulance is not going away.
Councillor Chambers?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. I find it a little bit unusual that the paramedic services budget, which is in excess of almost $30 million, is placed on our agenda as a consent item. I think in the future, items such as this should be items where we can discuss it rather than a consent item, which we're supposed to just, if we have questions ahead of time, ask them, but otherwise we accept them summarily.
Duly noted. Any other questions on that report? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, moving on to section 7.2, consent items to be received. Does anybody want any of those pulled? Councillor Miller?
Well, I wouldn't mind 7.2.1 pulled. And 7.2.3.
Okay, so that's the annual billing statement and the age-friendly community plan. And Councillor Bell, yours was 7.2.1. Anybody else want any pulled? Okay, so we're going to vote on 7.2.2 and 2.4. All those in favor? Opposed? Those are carried. 7.2.1, Councillor Miller?
Okay, just a quick question. It's a little bit opaque, that report. I know we spent almost $6 million in 2023. It looks like 2025 is going to be $7 million. That's $1 million increase from 2 years ago. Okay, I just wondered, what did we spend in 2024? I just want that percentage, and I never seen it in this report.
Anybody have that? Anybody anybody able to get us that?
It must be opaque.
I think we're just looking for it right now. Stand by.
I think finance is just looking for that. We don't have, like, cause they reconcile at the end of the year. So we can certainly find what they had budgeted for this time for 2024. It's just, we won't have the final, what we actually spent in 2024.
Through you, Mr. Chair, for 2024, we budgeted $5,834,000.
Okay, so just to be clear then, we budgeted less in 2024 than what the reconciled statement was for 2023?
Well, that, through Mr. Chair, through the chair, the 2023 reconciliation just came in, right, as part of this, as part of the 2025 amount. They're a full year behind in the reconciliations.
Okay, so that's, in percentage terms, that's quite large then.
Yes.
Are we gonna investigate this in more detail, or do we just, what are we doing? Are we just receiving it and taking it?
Just
or
receiving.
Is there options later on to, through the budget process to, I guess, deal with that? Okay.
Councillor Bell?
Yeah, I think Councillor Miller's got all my observations there. Thank you.
Okay. Nothing else on 7.2.1? All in favor of 7.2.1? Opposed? That one's carried. 7.2.3, Councillor Miller.
Just as far as the update goes, I appreciate that. Sarah's work on that. Just a quick question. Does this can be modified, changed over time? This plan, like all plans?
I would think it's a living document.
And there's a reason I'm asking.
Through the chair, yeah, this plan will be modified as we move forward.
Oh, and the reason I'm asking is I'm going through it, and it's interesting because Greg Demers actually talked about it. Scammers. If you talk about seniors, one of the biggest things that they face is scammers, and people target the seniors. Whether it's a phone call saying, "I'm your grandson," I've been put in jail, which makes it harder for real grandchildren that are in jail to get help. But and then there's a scam in Toronto going around. They talked about it. They're showing up. We're going to do your roof, and they show pictures of the roof, and it's not even their roof. So, anyways, they're targets of scammers. The only real thing we've looked at is maybe through the Elder Abuse Committee. That's the closest thing they talk about scamming, but it's a very, very small part of that with the Elder Abuse Committee. The Elder Abuse Committee deals mainly with people that they know on an ongoing basis, whether it's a relative, whether it's a caregiver, so forth. So, and if you go to Norfolk, in their age-friendly document that they do put quite a bit of emphasis on scamming and how to protect seniors. And I'm going to ask, is there anything we could do to maybe to help them out?
Amazon. Through the chair, actually, yeah, we work with that group very closely, and we have actually offered workshops in the past as they come up through the Grand River Council of Aging. They often do those types of workshops and workshop series. So it's just basically as requested, and we're happy to communicate back to them, and maybe we can work on bringing that forward again.
Again, I think it's a very important issue. It really is. Whether it's somebody's calling from, say, they're from CRA or you've lost your credit card, so it's happening. So okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So we're going to vote on 7.1.3. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We are going to take a 2-minute recess here. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that short break. We are moving on to staff reports. Staff report 8.1, RPT 0483-24. Councillor Garneau has a conflict with that. She has removed herself. Can I get a mover to get that on the floor? Councillor Coleman, Councillor Oakley. Questions on that report? Councillor Coleman.
This just surprises the H out of me that nobody's got any questions on this, on a replacement of 18 vehicles. I had questions yesterday. I did phone Greg, and he gave me the answers. But I cannot believe that 11 of us or 10 of us sitting here around this horseshoe right now has no questions.
Councillor Bell, you got a question?
I have a question, just to help Brian out. No, I was surprised by the scale, but my question is, did we include this in our CapEx forecast last year for 2025? Or is this something that has come out of the woodwork during the course of this year?
Through the chair, I'd like to start out by answering that by thanking the finance staff. We've been working on this for 10 years, and we actually have a 10-year plan. So these were already forecasted. Some of these vehicles were actually forecasted last year to be replaced, but we pushed off replacement at that time due to the budgetary concerns. So now we're playing a little bit of catch up, but when I joined the county many years ago, I was working with all the Heathers and the Vanessas over in finance, and we started talking about a 10-year plan, and we built a 10-year plan. So the reason why I'm bringing the report forward today is this would normally go through the budgetary process, and because that's going to be later in the season, I don't want to lose the opportunity to place the vehicle orders, because when you want a vehicle in 2025, you have to place the order in 2024. So we're finally caught up with our vehicles. We've been stretching these vehicles and repurposing as much as we can, but just for committees, so you're aware, some of these vehicles date back all the way to 2006. Some of these vehicles have in excess of 400,000 kilometers on them. And some of these vehicles are very essential to our service, where we can't have them break down and they're starting to show signs of wear. So we've done our best to stretch them. There's a couple more that we've pushed off. I know this is a big ask, but these are essential, and we've talked a lot with all the departments so that we verified that these are needs. So thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just to be clear, and maybe it's a question Heather can answer, what did we include in the forecast last year for 2025 for this line item, and how much different is it?
We're going to get that.
Heather can answer.
Heather?
Through the chair to Councillor Bell. It is a little bit different than last year's forecast because we had moved some items from 2024 to 2025. Now also on this report, it includes an ice resurfacer, which was not on the fleet list last year, if you're just looking at the fleet list, but it was in the community services list last year. And again, every year we do look at the 10-year forecast and we make further adjustments to known pricing increases. So any known pricing increases would have changed based on what last year's forecast had been for these pieces of equipment. So the exact dollar amount may not have been in last year's plan, just due to those changes in the pricing increases. Now also a few of the pieces of equipment on the list, one specifically does have some funding from development charges based on the requirement of it being growth related. So they're not all coming from the same funding source.
hopefully, hopefully that answered your question.
So I'm just looking for it's $1 million more or it's $500,000 more? Because I guess when we start our budget process, we'll start from what we spent in 2024. And we had an estimate for 2025, which will now be different and will reflect an increase in the starting point for 2025.
Sorry, I'm just going to see if I can very quickly open what the capital forecast was for last year. For fleet specifically. Now again, because the ice resurfacer wasn't in the fleet section, my total might be a little bit different. So the grand total that we had in the fleet forecast presented last year was $3,302,000.
So it's very
So
close.
then if you add the ice resurfacer into that, it was pretty close.
Yep, good answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Miller?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Got a lot of supplemental information from the questions Councillor Coleman asked yesterday. But just I understand why you're bringing this forward today for a large front end loader or a nice resurfacer. My question is, why the pickup trucks? Why the SUV hybrid?
Greg?
Through the chair, because it's time for replacement, and as I said, some of those vehicles, like one of those is a 2006, we can't use it anymore. And if we want the vehicles replaced in 2025, we need to place the orders. When municipalities buy vehicles, there's an ordering window, it's called, and the vehicles are placed in that ordering queue. If we don't get into that queue, then we don't get our vehicles. And that's one of the things that a lot of municipalities are struggling with.
Okay, it must be different than for an individual, because I could go in tomorrow and buy a pickup truck, right?
Through the chair, that is correct, but you'll pay $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, sometimes more than what a municipality will pay for a truck, because when they do a run of vehicles, they'll run like municipal orders all at the same time.
Okay, yeah, and I did not know that until you, okay, thank you. That's good, good information.
Councillor Chambers?
I'm trying to think of a question just to mollify. So my question is, if municipalities get trucks $20,000 or $30,000 less than what I can, is there any way that I can? Because I've got a 2003 Dodge Ram that isn't worth anything and it's falling apart.
Through the chair, when I can figure that out for myself, I will share that for you.
And I hope that satisfies the Councillor Coleman for the
Mayor Bailey?
I want to ask a question too, because I feel like I should have been paying more attention, but since it's not really my business to know whether they're Fords or Chevs, I was just wondering whether the ice resurfacer was a Zamboni or something else.
Through the chair, no, it's not, because through the purchasing policy, we have to go out for an ice resurfacer, and a Zamboni is actually a trademark or a name of a particular unit.
A local
name
that supports the community in big ways. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. I have one question here. So these are all replacements. What do we do with the other ones? Do we sell them? Might be looking for a front end loader.
So through the chair, so depending on what we're replacing here, when the tenders goes out, like the front end loader, what we would do is put that out and then ask for a trade-in, give us some trade-in values. On the pickup trucks, we send those to auction so that the community, if they wish to purchase something, they have the same opportunity as anyone else.
Okay, no, it's interesting because that's the ones that I was talking about, the front end loaders and stuff like that, the bigger items. So it's good to know that it's a trade-in on that. Okay. And there's a truck there for Councillor Chambers. Perfect. Any other questions? Seeing none, are you satisfied, Councillor Coleman? Excellent. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. Councillor Garneau is going to rejoin us here. And we will move on to 8.2, which is RPT 0482-24, staffing for automated speed enforcement. Can I get a mover? Councillor Oakley. Councillor Kyle. Questions? Councillor Chambers.
If I understand this correctly, I've read the report, and I'm trying to remember back when we first talked about this. Was this factored in that we need 2 additional employees for 1 camera? And if we have another camera, that's 2 more. And I'm kind of blown away by this, to tell you the truth. And is there cost recovery to recover this? And my other question would be, why can't this wait to be a budget issue, or is it does it render the speed camera inoperable if we don't have the people to do this?
Greg?
Through the chair to Councillor Chambers. So there is a basic formula that we are using based on the experience from other municipalities. If you recall, in the previous report from September, we had high compliance and low compliance rates. What we're doing with this exercise here is we believe that it's going to be, we're still going to have a surplus with the first camera. And then we're going to hire accordingly as we require additional staff. So we're going to monitor the numbers. We do have some numbers for the second and third camera. I can tell you one of the locations, the data is very, very high. So likely when we come into the second camera, we're probably going to ask for additional staff. These 2 staff here to launch the program, I think initially we're going to recruit for a screening officer. My understanding is that the onset of this program, when you launch it, you may get a lot of screenings. We're doing some work, some policy work in the background where we're trying to alleviate some of these screenings, but anecdotally, the experience in another municipality that is doing automated speed enforcement through the administrative penalty system is they received about 400 screening requests in the first quarter. So we're trying to position ourselves where we're not going to get that many screenings, but the possibility is there. So we want to have somebody in place to run those screenings. We do have staff right now that are trained. We have 2 officers, they're municipal law enforcement officers, but they've received a designation through the ministry. They've taken some training. So they are provincial offenses officers. So we're trying to delay hiring another provincial offenses officer until we start rolling out more cameras and the demand is there. So we want to be prepared for, the influx of penalty notices or penalty orders that we get. So we're just taking a cautious approach and putting it on the radar that we're going to need to hire some staff. We do have 2 staff that we're requesting right now just to launch the program.
Councillor Chambers?
Yeah, I understand that. I just was going through my mind, is it more practical and to, rather than hire staff to look at paperwork, than hire additional police officers that would enforce speeding all over the county rather than 100 yards in front of a particular location. That's a lot of money to invest in speed control in one particular spot in the county, and I'm waiting for the review of this after a year to see whether it is indeed worth the investment that we're putting into it to control speeding in 100 yards of the county, when perhaps the funds could be spent and hiring additional police officers that would patrol the entire county and maybe do as much good for the cause of reducing speeding in the county.
Any other questions? Councillor Kyle and Councillor McAlpine.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you to Greg. Greg, and I probably should know the answer to this question, but what exactly is the screening officer screening?
Through the chair. So essentially when somebody receives a penalty order, there's a 2-stage process where somebody can appeal. It's legislated under the Highway Traffic Act and the regulations for automated speed enforcement. So the first step would be a screening officer where they would request a screening from the officer. That would be a municipal employee. That person would basically review the penalty order under specific parameters. As we're developing the policy, those parameters are going to be public facing. And then they can make a decision at that point whether to confirm the penalty notice. They can vary it, they can extend a payment plan, or they can quash it. So we are trying to do some policy work on the front end, just so that the public is aware, so that we don't get an influx of screenings for people that are used to the court system, where, you know, if they appear before court, they can ask for a reduction automatically, and oftentimes it's granted. I don't think that that's our position. We don't want to get inundated with screening requests.
That's kind of good. Okay. Councilor McAlpine?
So I think you kind of alluded to this, but I'm not 100% clear on it. We're supposed to have the cameras in place for a trial period before we actually start sending out the tickets. So we're in that trial phase now. Is the camera in place?
Through the chair, yeah. So the camera is in place. It was put in place on or about October 1st. So it is gathering data. We are seeing some, you know, based on the threshold that's been set, we are seeing some pretty significant numbers. I think for the first month, we're at about 4,700 penalty notices. And for this month, we're at about 2,200. Now that's based on, you know, the data that we've set the threshold at. When we go live, we do expect that, you know, that may decrease, because we certainly want to do a public campaign to notify the public that, you know, these cameras are in use. So people have to, you know, judge their speed and lower their speed accordingly.
Okay. So at this point, we're not sending out notices to people that those 4,400 people that they've been speeding or anything at this point? No, okay.
Through the chair, no, we're not. I think that was contemplated initially, but just the cost would have been exorbitant to do that, because we have to run a search every time that we send a letter to somebody. And that costs us $8.25 through the Ministry of Transportation.
Right. Okay.
So I just want to confirm, you did say 4,700?
Through the chair, yeah, that's correct.
I think that circles back to your point there, Councilor Chambers, that too funny. Councilor Howes, you had something?
Thanks. Well, Mr. Chair, you kind of tackled my point a little bit there. And just for the benefit of the people who are watching at home, and this is a location that is within, this is touching on a bunch of topics from tonight. This is a location that's within 400 feet of a stop sign, right? More or less. And it's directly in front of a school. And you're saying that in 6 weeks, we've had, with a threshold of, you know, we're not nailing somebody 1 kilometer over the speed limit. You said 4,700 violations. Is that accurate?
Through the chair, that's what the data is saying right now.
Wow. Okay.
Again,
Well,
we will expect a reduction in that, and we certainly hope there's a reduction in that, but very high.
Yes, and just to put it out there, the goal is for there to be none. Right? The goal is for there to be no violations, because the whole intention is to condition people to drive slower in these zones. So yeah, this plus you know, I recall 2 or 3 years ago, to Councillor Chambers' point, we did invest extra money through the OPP for specific officers dedicated to Highway Traffic Act issues like speeding offenses. So I think this is a good combination of efforts to try and make our community a safer place.
Councillor Kyle?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you to Greg. Greg, just to pick up on something you mentioned a minute or two ago, you said it costs $8.50 per search that you have to do. So when you run those, I'm going to make the assumption that there's the same person in some cases that's got multiple times through that zone. So are you searching that same license plate individually every time, or do you consolidate and go, this license plate has 8 offenses, we need to do 1 search, and then you times that fine by 8 or whatever? How does that work? Like, are we paying every time, or is there a consolidation that you can do if there is somebody that's coming up multiple times?
Through the chair. We are working on the software, and I do believe that they're going to have some mechanisms in the software to identify, you know, the same plate. You know, for various reasons, there may be patterns for this vehicle as well. I should qualify that the 825, when we do go live, we can download that cost to the owner. So that'll be part of the cost recovery. Again, we anticipate that this program will be self-sufficient and self-supporting based on the data that's been gleaned. There's been a lot of work that's been done in the background for projections. So we expect that it's going to be revenue neutral, or we may operate at a surplus.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, just a real quick one here that I have. The recommendation is that the committee approve the recruitment or hiring of one full-time screening officer and one provincial officer to administrate. I just want to confirm back to what Councillor Chambers was saying there. So we feel that with the staff that we have trained right now and adding this one additional provincial offense officer, that should get us to the point where we would be able to handle this camera, and then we'll base it on once we add another camera if another one is needed, or is it just we're going to add them with the cameras?
Through the chair, so we're gonna monitor the data very, very closely, and then make some decisions on hiring. As indicated in the report, there is a bit of a delay when you hire a provincial offences officer. There's a bit of a process that they have to go through. We do have some staff right now that have been trained. They're designated. There's 2 officers. Keeping in mind they do have other duties. But I would venture to guess that probably in June we're probably going to be looking at another provincial offences officer, just to kind of handle that second camera because of the volumes. So we want to make sure that we have the right people in place at the right time so that the program can continue successfully operating without any delays.
Okay, and I appreciate the way you said that, Greg, because I was worried about if we pull them off their regular duties, that's going to kind of, if we've got the folks that are trained, that's great. But to your point, they've got other things they need to do too. So I'm glad you said that. Okay, perfect. No other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. 8.3, which is RPT 0501-24, the Gainesville Premier Employment Hub Comprehensive Land Use Strategy. Mover. Councillor Garneau, Councillor Kyle. Questions? Councillor Miller.
I like the study. I think it's a great idea. My question is, and I'll read a line from the report. It says, once full services become available. So we're expecting them to become available. I know we're working on it. Is this study premature, or do we know when services will become available?
Through the chair, so there was a master servicing plan done. I believe it went to council in June, so that laid out the preliminary plan. My understanding is that operations will go to a consultant to do the actual design work in early 2025. So then that'll kind of, depending on the design and the consulting work, depend when it will come online, whether or not it will be phased or all at once.
Councillor Miller?
You don't think this study's too early, is what I'm saying.
What's that?
You don't think this is too early?
The benefit of, Rob Walton's.
I think CEO Allison wants to say something here.
Thank you, to you, Mr. Chair. So the idea is that from what I understand, the design work for the actual servicing would take approximately a year, and then the actual construction approximately a year. This also would take approximately 1 year. So I wanted them to go at the same time. Not only is it a requirement through the new Planning Act, but we wanted to make sure that when we get to that point where servicing is going to be available, that there was a lead time to be able to actually get tenants in place and things could hit the ground running. So the idea was to have them go in tandem, so it would be fully ready and fully serviced and shovel ready by the time the services are in the ground.
Rob?
Through the chair to Councillor Miller, there's an extreme demand out there. I think we're into our third interim servicing agreement out there in this area for things that are going to go ahead on, holding tanks and whatever, awaiting the services. So we are out for the expression of interest to hire the consultant to do the pumping station design right now. And whether we'll see that implemented in 2026. That it would be the hope. And this really does need to go in parallel with that.
Councilor Miller?
Yeah, I'm not confident at this point. I would rather see it delayed a year, but that's just my thoughts.
Anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.4, RPT-0511-24, Assessment-Based Management Policy. Can I get a mover? Councilor Oakley. Councilor Kyle. Who's on this side of the table here? Questions on that report? Councilor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to staff, I do have a few. On page 3 of 3 on the memo portion of the report, I'm wondering if it could be explained what the difference between what is a review role, and then how is that different from a county-initiated action?
Chairman, to Councilor Cano, we review the role to ensure that all the properties are assessed property. We have a company that actually does the review for us. They pick up any discrepancies in zoning or any building permits that are missed. Council initiated appeals is when there is a major error that MPAC cannot fix. The only way to fix the error is to actually appeal the assessment to the ARB.
Councilor Garneau.
Thank you. And then on a slightly different topic, section 11 of the policy addresses discrepancies. And one of the things it says is that the county will help property owners who have lost their agricultural, forestry, or conservation designation. I'm just wondering what help we offer in those circumstances.
I've just recently helped a lady. We filled out the forms, we helped them revise them. Because the AgriCorp cannot go back to prior years, they can only do the next year. So anything now would only be done for 2024 or 2025. We do the 2024 under section 357, 358 of the Municipal Act.
Thank you. And one further one. In the event that the county has taken an action that's caused someone to lose one of those statuses, do we still help them? And if so, how does that unfold?
As far as has happened, we have not had anybody lose their status because of any action on behalf of the county. If they did, we would still take the same action. We would help them, assist them to get it back. Work with AgriCorp, MPAC, and the property owner.
Okay, thank you.
Garneau. Anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, 8.5, RPT 0519-24, municipal and school board elections, alternate forms of voting. Can I get a mover? Councilor Coleman. Councilor Bell. Questions? See? Councilor Miller?
Well, we've had this discussion before, Mr. Chair, but maybe the clerk could speak to how do you know it's secure? I guess. What measures do we take if we go to an online voting?
Through the chair to the councilor's question, there are a lot of mechanisms today that are a lot more secure than online voting in the past. So a lot of vendors today, there are a lot more today than there used to be. They have a lot more options when it comes to two-factor verification. So you're sent a unique code either by mail or by email, whatever it is, along with some personal information that you are pairing together to make sure that you are getting the right person to vote.
Okay. I mean, I always like the paper ballot because you can count them, you can recount them, and things like that. I'm not worried about Iran or Russia or anybody, hacking the municipal election in Brant. But my main concern, and it's just a reflection of my age. So I just want it to be secure. So, but I guess you would feel it's secure, otherwise you wouldn't be making this recommendation.
Any other questions? Councilor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess more of a comment for staff to take back. One of the things that was brought to my attention during the election was with regards to the voters list, and I know it comes to us in a certain way and we take it as it is.
But in a number of cases, I had individuals let me know that they had, say, for example, adult children still listed as electors in this community despite being gone a long time. And if the secondary check to cast a pin online is one's birth date, one's parents likely also know their children's birth date as far as being able to cast additional votes. I'm not sure if perhaps the clerk could just comment on that, because the other two scenarios that came to me is name individuals receiving voters cards in both their married and their maiden names, or for deceased individuals within their homes.
Through the chair to the councillor's question. So the voters list has been taken over by Elections Ontario, so they're doing a better job now. We have staff across the municipalities working very closely with them from as early as last year, trying to clean that up right now, and it looks pretty good. I've looked at it too, so we're a little bit more hopeful with the voters list there. In terms of parents knowing their kids' birthdays or any family members, it can happen, but again, there are ways to send the unique pin that wouldn't just go out by mail. It could go to an email address. There are things that vendors offer so that it's a bit more secure that way. We can try to mitigate those concerns.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Councillor Oakley?
Through the chair to the clerk, I just want to say that I'm thrilled that we'll be offering the online voting potentially on the day of election. I know this was something heard from a number of folks who were planning on voting online. They found out they couldn't, had some sort of illness, something preventing them from being there in person, and they were unable to cast their vote. So I think this is a great step forward.
Anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.6 RPT 042424, 2026 election ward boundary and council composition survey. Mover. Councillor McAlpine, Councillor Howes. Questions? Councillor Oakley.
Through the chair, in which year would we be intending to have this 2030 municipal election review with the external expertise?
We would be looking at starting that probably about 2027. We'd be looking at getting someone in line to start that process, because if we're doing a full one, there's a lot of details that are going to have to be milled through.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, section 9, committee reports. 9.1, tourism advisory. Can I get a mover? Councillor Kyle, Mayor Bailey. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 9.2, Brant Heritage. Can I get a mover? Councillor Howes. Councillor McAlpine. Questions? Councillor Oakley.
Through the chair to the members of committee. Just for some context, I was reading through the minutes as well. It wasn't explicit. What is this Joint Heritage Committee?
Councillor Howes.
So there are, and Councillor McAlpine, feel free to chime in on the details, but there are a number of municipalities that work together on as a joint heritage effort and compare notes and best practices, and they meet once a year at different locations, and it's our turn next year. That's the short answer.
Thank you. Councillor Oakley, you're good with that? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, moving on. Communications, I see none. Other business, Councillor Bell, you had 2 items.
Thank you. I've had a number of people raise concerns about the proliferation of signage on Rest Acres Road. If anybody drives between Cobblestone and Arlington Parkway, you'll pass, I'm going to guess, 20 signs. And yet there's the big pillar that has all of the businesses that are involved in that commercial plaza. So a question, I think, to our staff, is that permissible? My understanding is that they are the right size. They're 8x4, so they meet that criteria. But are we comfortable having literally tens of them on the side of the road? Because they distract from people looking at the other signs that we want them to look at, like there's a roundabout coming, you shouldn't stop there. It doesn't stop people from stopping there, but that's the truth of the matter. So could somebody from staff give me a sense of whether that's something that is both permissible and collectively, is it desirable?
CEO?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we do occasionally get reports of signage and stuff that's not in compliance with our bylaw. Certainly I can have staff, take a drive and see if there's any that are non-compliant. If they are, then we could certainly ask them to be taken down. Your sort of separate question was regarding the community service signs that we have in different communities, and there is a staff report coming forward on that, really to close off the wayfinding strategy. So that will sort of be addressed as a separate issue, and I think they need to be dealt with separately. My sense is that most of those are for service clubs versus the signage that you're actually referring to on Rest Acres Road.
Yeah, the commentary I get back from residents is this doesn't actually fit with Paris being the prettiest little town in Ontario. And they're quite right, it's rather ugly. So I would appreciate if we can take a look at it. Second question was around roundabouts and safety on roundabouts, and we've mentioned this before. Could staff comment as to whether they're looking at improving the safety, pedestrian safety on roundabouts?
Okay. Rob's going to come up.
Or Rob answers this question. We should prepare ourselves for a delegation coming, I think, probably next meeting or the one after that, led by somebody whose children came very close to being hit on the roundabouts on Rest Acres Road.
Through the chair to Councillor Bell. Actually, this past week, there was some correspondence that made its way through to some councillors and to staff, and a number of us in operations actually had a meeting with our consultants designing our current roundabouts coming forward on Grand River Street North as to what these implications were for these other ones which weren't designed by them, but they certainly understand the design and what's coming up for Grand River Street North. So I think what we need to do is we need to get a good education program, a better education program for our residents as to what the safety considerations on roundabouts is for pedestrians, and to get the real word out there. And there's worldwide statistics on this, and roundabouts are quite safe, much safer than many signalized intersections. And we certainly can provide that information through to council and through to the residents. That being said, there are some new things coming up in roundabout design, and we are looking at some measures to improve the newer ones, which we're going to be doing next year on Grand River Street North. So, I could go on for this for half an hour. The answer to the question is yes, we're looking at it. Yes, we need to do education, and yes, we'll be bringing more information back to council.
Yeah, and if I may, Mr. Chair, one of the things that keeps coming back to us is people are getting familiar with roundabouts, because if you go to Cambridge or Kitchener or Waterloo, you'll see lots of them. And they will point to enhancements on the roundabouts there that we don't have, which would improve the safety of pedestrians. So if when you report back, you can comment on why we're different and why we're different and what we could do to come to the same standard that our neighbours have.
Through the chair to Councillor Bell, over time, all of these things evolve, and I would say the standards we've used are mostly all the same, and the consultants use are mostly all the same ones that have been used for the regional Waterloo ones as well. There are new enhancements which are being brought into some of their new ones there. Many of these things would be very difficult to retrofit back into existing ones without a huge piece of construction. So, we're looking forward to that. As far as changes with signage and whatever, municipalities do some of that differently, and we certainly can look at some of that and see what we do going forward.
Okay.
The good news is, though, although we've had all these reports of how unsafe they are, we really haven't had much in the way of incidents in them. So,
okay, thank you for that. Councillor Miller, you had something on wayfinding strategy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be as brief as I can. So the wayfinding strategy we passed the council, I don't know how long ago, 7, 8 years ago. And it was a way of having common signage, I guess, for our towns and settlement areas across the county, since we hadn't done that since we were amalgamated. So it made sense. It costs a lot of money. I was surprised at the time. Even then, it seemed like a lot. So that's fine. I supported it. What I didn't know at the time was that for those hamlets, settlements, call them what you will, that aren't in the designated as a settlement area or hamlet in the official plan, and there's only 20, those signs would basically they'd be left to fall over and collapse. So, in talking to Allison, sounds like there could be close to 70 of those throughout the county. I put a picture of Harrisburg in there, not Harrisburg, Hatchley in there. I know Tonia's in there, Mount Vernon's in there, and if we go through all the wards, you'll find them. So I'm not sure if that's a good idea for 3 reasons, and I'll list them. First of all, and I'll take Hatchley. If you remove that sign, you will upset residents quite a bit, and I think needlessly. I think the same with Atonia. And the second reason is, we talked about it when we were talking about strategic planning. We wanted to treat all our residents, whether they live in Paris, St. George, whatever ward they live in, we wanted to treat them equitably. And I don't believe that's treating everybody equitably. If you ask somebody from Hatchley where they're from, the first thing they're going to say is, I'm from Hatchley. They don't say, I live in the county of Brant. They say, I'm from Hatchley. So, taking away taking away that sign, what does it leave them? What are they going to say? I live in the county of Brant. Okay, but where? And they'll say, I don't know where I live. So that's another. And then the third reason is historical. And I'll go to Mount Vernon because I did a little research on that with our local historian there, Clayton Barker. Mount Vernon sign came down. This is how it all started. And I just sent an email to Greg Demers. And he says, "Oh, can you guys put that back up?" And he said, "No." So he got me in contact with Melissa, who said, "Well, that's not part of our wayfinding strategy." And I said, "Okay." So she sent me the info on those 20 things, which I included in their package. But take Mount Vernon, for example. That was a town, started as Springfield back in 1802. So it's been around, 222 years. Started as Springfield. I think the name changed in 1850. It was actually a large town at the time. They had half a dozen mills there. If you're familiar with Mount Vernon at all, they had a cemetery, they had a railway stop, they have a church, and thanks to Councillor Garneau, I know they had a school because we have a picture of a graduating class from there. So it had a lot of things. Burford had a fire, big fire, bunch of fires in the early 1880s, and they actually took some of the commercial buildings from Mount Vernon and they moved them to Burford, which had also been called Claremont at one time. And it's interesting because talking to Clayton, he was connecting dots for me, and you could see that they wanted Burford to kind of take off, and it became part of this politically, for political reasons, that's why Brant County was started. So it's interesting if you learn about where something started and why, you understand where it's going to go to. So, anyways, take away the Mount Vernon sign. And what are you left with? All that history is gone. It's just gone. There's nothing to recognize it. So, I like I said, I understand the wayfinding strategy. I understand we want common signage for the settlement areas recognized in the OP. But at the same time, I don't believe we should be ignoring the existing signs for all those smaller, again, I'll call them hamlets or settlement areas throughout the county. So, that's what I've learned on this, and I did talk to staff, and what I would ask Mr. Chair, if you allow, is a motion to refer this matter back to staff, and then they could come back with a report saying we could just replace the current signs. We could upgrade them. There's a cost to that too, and at least we as a council could make that decision, have further discussion. So I'll make a motion that we refer the matter to staff, as seeking a second.
Councilor Garneau, second. Did you want to speak to it?
Yeah, so I do want to support Councillor Miller in this and offer a real example of why I think, as much as there's a cost, we should keep these identities. So if you ask me where I live, I kind of go, well, sort of near Canesville. 'Cause the alternative is to say on the east side of Brantford, and we are proudly Grant County, which lands me here today. But I suspect there are others around the table that, or their parents may have remembered the area as Smoky Hollow, Pine Grove, or the Johnson Settlement. But today that's not an area that is recognized, or even if I said we're in Pine Grove, I don't know that anyone would know how to find us, because I suspect the signage we once had is long since lost to history, and I've been on a mission to uncover that history, and another local historian who's here tonight has been helping me with that. But I think this is worth a discussion, particularly for our rural communities who are unlikely to ever identify as being part of more of our anchor communities. So I want to thank Councillor Miller for bringing this forward, and look forward to, if we're successful tonight with the resolution, a report from staff.
Great, thank you. Councillor Chambers.
Yes, I certainly support the resolution. I can recall, and maybe the people on council of the day can recall, when I did the same kind of spiel about Hatchley as Councillor Miller did about Mount Vernon, and that's why the Hatchley sign got erected. And my memory serves correctly, not all members of council were supportive of that. And I remember one in particular said, if we do it for one, we'll have to do it for everyone, which I said, maybe we should do it for everyone. And maybe that councillor can remember saying that. So I support the resolution. I know if you drive through Norfolk County, you go through Dog's Nest and Rattlesnake Harbor, and they've got their little signs up there, and Punky Doodle, those kind of places. It's interesting for the people that drive by. It's excellent for the residents who live there and know a little bit of the local history, and we don't want to lose that local history. And I certainly know a little bit about Mount Vernon. It was a county seat at one time, so not too long ago. And sure, these things should be done, and I don't expect that we need to put the big blue pillared signs like in Fairfield of all places, which has its own history, but doesn't really need that kind of a sign. It just needs a little sign that says this is where Fairfield is. So let's move forward and recognize our heritage and history, and name these little places and put the signs up so everybody knows where they are.
Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and I agree. I support this as well from a heritage perspective. And I think not only the people who have generations of history in these areas, but people who are new to this broader community move here because they like the small town charm. We hear that a lot. And one of the ways that we can maintain and reinforce the small town charm is by continuing to recognize these little hamlets, and I think it's a great idea.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the table. It is seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, that was it for other business. So now can I get a motion to go in camera? We're going to go in camera to discuss RPT-0504-24, a proposed impending acquisition or disposition of land by a municipality or local board, 925 Rest Acres Road. Councillor Coleman. Mayor Bailey. All in favor? Opposed? We're going to go Okay, we are back in open session. I do not see anything else on the agenda for this evening. We are back in open session. Anybody else have anything for the betterment of the county? If not, ask for motion to adjourn. Councillor Coleman, thank you. Have a great